Hey everyone, so the last lecture did cut off, so I'm just going to jump right into this. This is obviously part 2 of chapter 2. So where I ended off the last time, we were discussing problems with comparing international crime rates. So problems such as the hierarchy rule, and the different ways in which different nations record crime make it extremely difficult to compare crime rates across nations. Different nations, different countries define crime differently. That can pose a problem. It can be problematic. There is the problem also of efficiency, accuracy, capacity, and honestly, honesty on the part of police officers in various countries in recording and reporting their crimes, especially when it comes to reporting homicides, okay? So this is specifically the PowerPoint slide that we left off on. So again, discussing problems with comparing international crime rates. Here we have an illustration, a figure, on the average sub-region homicide rates according to criminal justice and public health data. These are two data sets that are combined in this figure, bar graph, to display the discrepancies when it comes to these two data sources, okay? So I'll do about 3 of them, and then you can pause the video and do the rest on your own, which I do highly recommend, because as criminologists, as people who work in the criminal justice system in some format, you should be able to read data, to read statistics, and we will get better at it throughout this semester. So let's just do a couple of them here. So looking at the top one, Southern Africa, in the blue, the criminal justice data is reporting that there are approximately 36 homicides per 100,000 people. Still looking at Southern Africa, but looking at the public health data in the green, they're reporting approximately 60 plus homicides per 100,000 people. Let's move down to the Caribbean, okay? In their criminal justice data, which is the blue again, they're reporting approximately 30 homicides per 100,000 people. And in the green, which is the public health data, they are reporting approximately 18 or 19 homicides per 100,000 people. Doing one more, let's go down to Southern Europe, okay? They are reporting approximately, let's say, one to 2 homicides per 100,000 people, and the public health data is consistent with that. Okay, so it actually is looking like, you know, Southern European countries, Oceania, Northern European countries have some consistent definitions, at least within their countries, right? When it comes to different sources, different data sources, okay? However, we can't still compare homicide rates using either of these data sources. We can't, if we're in Northern Europe, we can't compare Northern European homicide rates to Southern Africa, to Middle Africa, to Central America, to Southeastern Asia, okay? It just doesn't make sense. So let's move on to NIBRS, which is the National Incident-Based Reporting System, okay? NIBRS, the new and improved Uniform Crime Reporting System. This began in 1982. There are still efforts to improve the reliability and the validity of official statistics, which they're always occurring, okay? And the NIBRS is the most ambitious with it today, okay? It was designed to collect more detailed and comprehensive crime statistics than the UCR. Eventually, the NIBRS is supposed to replace the Uniform Crime Reporting System. With the NIBRS, there is no hierarchy rule under the system. It reports multiple victims, multiple offenders, and multiple crimes that may be part of the same incident. According to the Incident-Based Reporting Resource Center, as of June 2012, 32 states have been certified to report NIBRS to the FBI, and 3 additional states and the District of Columbia have individual agencies submitting NIBRS data. Approximately 29% of the population is covered by NIBRS reporting, which represents 27% of the nation's reported crime and 43% of law enforcement agencies. Now, there are issues of police bias, specifically when it comes to the data that we receive from the NIBRS and also from the Uniform Crime Reporting System. Remember, things aren't perfect, okay? So of course there are going to be flaws in all types of systems, okay? So NIBRS data provides information about both, again, the offender and the victim, and therefore can be used to try to resolve some important criminological issues. Multiple data sources show that people or groups of people are differentially involved in crime, and this differential involvement explains the bulk of racial disparities we see in the number of arrests and other crime statistics, such as stop and frisk, okay, or even the use of force, okay? However, differential involvement does not explain the racial disparity that we find and that we see in this data. If you guys don't know what differential enforcement means means and occurs when agents of the criminal justice system, okay, so people within the criminal justice system, treat people unequally based on factors such as their race, okay? But this doesn't have to only be limited to race, okay? And I think it's important to mention this because, right, we live in a society that is highly divided now, and we are constantly talking about race, racism, etc., without even necessarily a lot of us knowing the definitions of them, okay? But again, unequal treatment could be based on other factors besides race. What are some of those factors to you? Okay, I'll give you a second to think about those. That's a second, okay? You could be unequally treated, or groups of people can be unequally treated based on factors such as gender, sex, and remember, those are 2 different things, okay? Class, age, sexual orientation, ability or disability, etc., and so on, okay? Crime victimization data and their problems, okay? Crime victimization surveys involve asking a large number of people if they have been criminally victimized within some specified time frame, regardless of whether or not they reported the incident to police. Again, this survey is known as the National Crime Victimization Survey, the NCVS. One of your learning objectives in the, I don't have the textbook, but one of the learning objectives in this week's chapter is to know the difference between the UCR, the Uniform Crime Reports, and the NCVS. okay, which is the National Crime Victimization Survey. Make sure you know what they're each reporting or surveying, know the differences, know the similarities, okay? The NCVS requests information on crimes committed against individuals and households, the circumstances of the offenses as well, and personal information about the victims and offenders. This information can include and will often include the person's race, sex, age, income, educational level, and most importantly, the victim and offender relationship, how they know each other, how they're associated, etc. Okay? Some problems, as I said, we were going to get to include some problems with this survey data, include the following, okay, that I'm going to list out for you guys. Crimes such as drug dealing and all victimless crimes such as prostitution and gambling are not revealed in such surveys for obvious reasons. And because murder victims cannot be interviewed, this most serious of crimes is also not included. Because NCVS only surveys households, crimes committed against commercial establishments such as stores, bars, and factories are not included. This exclusion results in a huge underestimate of crimes such as burglaries, robberies, thefts, and vandalism. Victimization data do not have to meet the stringent legal or evidentiary standards in order to be reported as an offense. If the respondent says he or she was robbed, then a robbery will be recorded. The Uniform Crime Report data, on the other hand, passes through the legal sieve to determine whether the reported incident was indeed a robbery or not. Other problems that may arise when it comes to crime victimization surveys can be memory lapses that people have, providing answers that they believe that the respondent wants to hear. They could forget bits and portions, large portions of the incident. They could embellish, okay, the incident. And any number of misunderstandings can arise. There may be ambiguities and even downright lies that occur when one person is interviewing another about their experience, okay? Just as underreporting plagues the Uniform Crime Reports, the UCR data, overreporting may plague the NCVS data, okay? However, we are trying to initiate improvements when it comes to this, specifically when it comes to the bounding interview. So the bounding interview involves comparing reported incidences from the same household in the current interview with those reported 6 months prior. When a report appears to be a duplicate, the respondent is reminded of the earlier report and asked if the new report represents the incident previously mentioned or if it's different. Okay, so we're kind of winding down the chapter now. There are a couple more sections left. So let's get through this. Okay, so areas of agreement between the UCR and the NCVS. The UCR and the NCVS agree on the demographics of a crime. Both say that males, the young, the poor, African Americans are more likely to be perpetrators and victims of crime than are females, older persons, wealthier persons, and persons of other races. Both sources will also agree on geographic areas and times of the year and month when crimes are more likely to occur. Okay. It's useful to resolve various issues. So I'm going to quickly get into the masculinization hypothesis. Okay, so it's useful to resolve various issues like the masculinization hypothesis put forward by some of our feminist criminologists. The essence of this hypothesis is that women are becoming more masculinized as a result of assuming male roles in the workforce, and that this is reflected in the increased rates of female arrests for violent crimes. Okay, I do want you guys to keep that in your head, tucked away somewhere in your head. What do you think about that? Okay. Also, I mean, think about the ways that female and male crimes are reported on the news, just to throw in some current kind of examples, right? Are they reported differently on the news when a female, oh, I hate using that term, when a woman commits a crime that we typically wouldn't associate with women? How do they report it? Okay. Is the woman looked at as masculine or has taken on masculine traits, masculine roles? Okay. So getting into the self-report crime surveys and their problems. So obviously we're going over surveys, reports, and their issues, okay? So the self-report crime survey is a way to collect data without having to rely on government sources, okay? So self-report surveys of offending, okay, provides a way for criminologists to collect data without having to rely on, again, government sources. Researchers can correlate a variety of characteristics of respondents with their admitted offenses that go beyond the demographics of age, of race, and of gender. Again, there are some problems with this kind of survey data collection. Some problems are self-reported crimes sometimes provide a distorted picture of the criminal involvement. The majority of self-reported studies surveyed convenience samples of high school and college students populations in which seriously criminally involved individuals are not expected to be found. Self-report studies typically uncover only fairly trivial antisocial acts such as fighting, stealing items worth less than $5, smoking, and truancy. These are hardly acts that help to understand the serious and the true nature of crime. Most people are forthright in revealing minor antisocial behaviors. Most people do not have a serious crime history. And those who do have distinct tendencies of serious crime tend to underreport their crimes. Furthermore, males tend to report antisocial activities less honestly than females, and African Americans less honesty than other racial groups. Okay, this was found by certain authors that are cited in our book and others. So you have that. Several studies have addressed the issue of accuracy and honesty of self-reported offenses in various ways, and the results have generally been encouraging, at least for uncovering the extent of minor offenses. On average, known delinquents and criminals disclose almost 3 times as many offenses as non-delinquents. Crime mapping, okay? I've only used GIS probably like for a year. It is a simple program to use, But, and in criminology, you guys use it a lot. But it is very useful, okay? The use of modern technology, such as geographic information systems, GIS, by police departments to map, so visualize and analyze patterns of crimes has become very useful. The geography of a city can strongly influence crime because the features or characteristics can make it easier or more difficult for crime to occur. Now, I mean, that's just a short blurb. There was only a short section of your chapter that was dedicated to that. But I want you guys in this section to use your experiences. Where were you guys born? Okay, what cities have you guys visited? Where have you guys lived? Okay, and are those areas more conducive to crime or not? Okay, just an observation. It is not, we're not doing a study. We're not saying that, the area that I live in causes crime, right? Because many things can cause crime. But think about it. Okay, is there a pattern that you see, that you think exists out there? Okay, for some of you, it might be easier than for others. And again, we are different people. We live in different environments. We have seen different things, okay? For me personally, I do see a pattern when it comes to geography and crime. Maybe it's because where I was born. And I moved to a different area. So now I live in a better area. And when I say better, there are many factors that make it better, right? And it's not just, different racial groups, right? It's, the streets are smooth. Hospitals are great in my area. Housing is great in my area. Healthcare is great in my area. The homelessness in my area is very low. Okay. And the homelessness that we do have, there are resources for them right in this area. Okay, whereas where I grew up wasn't the same. Okay, but just think about that when it comes to geography and crime. Does geography influence? Is it associated to crime? Moving on to white collar crime. Okay, white collar crime, through the FBI's financial report. The only white collar crimes that is crimes committed by guile as opposed to force listed in the UCR are embezzlement, forgery and counterfeiting, and fraud, which are mostly committed by individuals. The FBI financial crime report is the white collar version of the UCR. Okay, this report focuses on ongoing and completed investigation of many different kinds of white collar crimes, such as insider trading, fraudulent schemes, and medical fraud. Okay. Here again, this is from the FBI's financial crimes report. And again, it's just a summary of the FBI's white collar prosecutions in 2011 and 2013. You can pause right now to read this. Again, we have pie charts and just different data that is listed. Okay. One of the last sections we'll get into right now is the dark figure of crime. The dark or the hidden figure of crime is that a portion of the total of crimes committed each year. There's a portion of the total amount of crime committed each year that never comes to light. Okay, self-reports are concentrated in the upper end of the seriousness continuum rather than the lower end, partly due to nearly all self-reporting surveys that exclude most persistent serious offenders from their subject pools, and Many of those most serious offenders who remain in self-report subject pools do not reveal to the full extent their criminal histories. So what can we do and what can we conclude about the three main measures of crime in America? Remember, that is the UCR, that is the NIBRS, and that is the NCVS, okay? Oh, and again, here is just a chart on the proportions of reported and underreported crimes for the three major measures of crime, okay? So what can we conclude about the three main measures of crime in America? Okay, the three main measures of crime in America are obviously imperfect. The UCR still probably is the best single source of data for studying serious crimes and the only one for studying murder rates in other types of circumstances, but specifically murder rates. The NIBRS is best for a more comprehensive picture of criminal events such as the demographics of an offender and the victims, but not as nationally representative as either the UCR or the NCVS. So in other words, the NIBRS is great when looking at events, specifically if you're focusing on demographics such as race, class, gender, educational attainment, income, etc. Okay. Victimization or self-report survey data is good for studying less serious but much more common crimes. Either victimization or self-reported survey data are the best. Self-reports are the preferable data source for many individuals. All three data sources converge on some very important points about crime. They enable us to proceed with at least some confidence in our endeavors to understand the whys of crime. This convergence of information is known as triangulation. The basics of demographic crime constitutes the raw social facts that are the building blocks of our criminological theories, okay? So I'm sorry that cut off in the I'm sorry that cut off on the last recording, because that easily could have been fit into one just video. But as for this week, again, you have to read Criminology Chapter 2. That's the Walsh and Jorgensen book. You have to read Punish, the preface in Chapter 1. You also have a discussion board to partake in, as well as a quiz on Punished. Okay, so all of those sources, even if you do not have books, they're up on Blackboard right now. So you should be able to do everything. Sound good? And you will have all the resources also available to you on Blackboard next week. Bye, guys.